Tonight we'll be grilling a New York strip steak. We'll be doing some braised carrots, which we've already started. You can see the recipe for those in our previous video on pan-fried fish. We'll be doing garlic mashed potatoes and also some mixed greens that we picked up from the farmer's market. So here we've peeled some potatoes, and now I'm gonna cut them up into quarters so that way they boil a little bit faster. So we're filling up our pot here of potatoes with water. I'm going to put them right over here. Put them about medium-high heat so they come to a boil. And here's a good chance here to season the potatoes. Generous shaking of salt. We're just going to cover those up, bring them to a boil, and we're going to boil them until they're fork tender. So that means when you can poke them with a fork and the fork comes right back out easily. So we're going to clean off our greens. We have a nice combination here of, I think, pak choy and some other Asian greens. I'm not really sure. They didn't tell me everything that was in it, so we're going to rinse these off here. So we're going to check our potatoes now. I got my fork to check if it's fork tender. And that's definitely fork tender because you can see I push it in and they're just falling apart. So that's about as soft as you want them, so that way they make for easy mashing in just a sec. Now we're going to come over here to our colander and drain our potatoes. And kind of like when you're making Kraft mac and cheese, you can put the pan right back on the burner without the heat on. Just make sure these are nice and drained. We're going to add these right back into the pan. Now, here's going to be my little disclaimer about mashed potatoes. I don't have an exact recipe for mashed potatoes because I feel like everybody kind of wants them a separate way. So what I'm just going to explain is the basic ingredients, and then you can adjust the proportions how you like them. So if you like them a little smoother, you're going to add a little bit more milk, a little bit more butter, mash them a little bit longer. If you like them chunkier, make sure you leave some chunks. So let's go ahead. I'm going to take out our butter and some milk. Actually, we use half and half. I'm just going to start off with about a tablespoon-sized glob of butter. We'll probably add more later. We'll start with that. A little bit of fresh local half and half from Battenkill Creamery. And this is the proper tool for mashing potatoes. This is a potato masher, in case you haven't seen one before. Make sure you have one of these. If not, a fork works well, but takes a little bit longer. I'm just going to start mashing away at those. And keep adding butter and milk until you get them about the right consistency length. I don't mean to make this an ad, but what's going to make these garlic mashed potatoes today, I saw this at the farmer's market, horseradish bacon garlic spread, and I thought that would be, wow, that would be perfect for going in mashed potatoes. So I'm going to start adding a little bit of that. Again, this is kind of just an experiment. I don't really know how much of this we're going to end up using, but we'll just start adding a little bit of this at a time. Keep tasting it. It's got kind of a yogurt consistency, but they said there's no dairy in it. We're going to add some of that until we taste it. If you want to make the more traditional garlic mashed potatoes, it's really quite simple. All you have to do is chop up some garlic, 1 or 2 cloves, and just mash that in with your potatoes. And that should just about, again, just until taste. So make sure, always, we should taste them until we get the proper flavor. And we really want to make sure these are well seasoned because we're not going to be getting any gravy out of our steak. Definitely the right consistency. I'm going to add a little bit more of the garlic, and probably in a minute I'm going to add quite a bit of salt and pepper to finish off the seasoning. Before we start cooking the steak, I just want to get all of our ingredients ready for our mixed greens that we're going to that we're going to cook up in some oil. So first, this is very similar to when we did the spinach. I'm just going to slightly thin some garlic. This is an extra huge clove, so I'm probably going to cut the slices up again, just so that nobody gets a giant hunk of garlic in their mouth when we're eating. But we'll fry these up in the oil. Later we'll also use some ginger, and we'll finish it off with a little bit of soy sauce. I like mushrooms in my steak, so I picked up some shiitakes. I just wanted to talk about how to prepare shiitakes. You don't typically want the stem with them, so all you got to do is just kind of yank that off and toss it. So we'll do that. And I usually just cut them into, reasonably thick strips. I don't like them really super tiny. They cook a little better, I feel, when they're a little bit thicker. So that's about what we're going for. Nice bite-sized slices. So at this point we're ready to do our steak now. We've been letting this pan get nice and hot. We have a grill pan here. Also, to finish off, we're just going to use the grill pan to sear it, at which point we're going to put it into a 300-degree oven, which I've preheated here because that's the heat rating on the pan there. And then just before we get started here, you want to wait until right before you're going to use the steak for this. Any kind of steak or grill seasoning you want to use is great. Even just sea salt and pepper is fine. So, a healthy portion right there. And then we'll put that right in the pan and pop the other side off with some of that seasoning as well. So we'll sear that on each side for probably about a minute each, and then we'll pop it right in the oven to finish it off. So we've flipped our steak now. This is about the kind of searing, the coloring you're looking for on each side. Before I put this in the oven, I will sear the sides of the steak, especially the fat side. I'll show you that in a minute once we're ready to flip it onto the other side. So now we're going to just sear the sides real quick before we put it in the oven. There's one side. There's the other side. And pan is off. Excuse me. In the oven we go, finish it off. And while that's cooking, we're going to get right to work on our fried up greens. I've got a hot pan over here, some oil in it. We're going to go ahead and put our garlic in just to infuse that garlic into the oil. You don't want to cook it too long, make sure we don't burn it. And then we're going to put those greens and the ginger, right? We're going to put the ginger and the greens right in. There's our garlic. You can already smell that garlic. And we'll go ahead, we're going to grab our ginger. And I'm just going to use a microplane. You can use any kind of a grater, or you can even just chop and dice this up yourself, that's fine. This is just quick and easy. I'm going to fry that. A good amount of ginger in there. I really want that ginger flavor in with the greens. And as soon as that is started to fry up, we're just going to put our greens right in the pan. Just a sec here. We're just going to add our greens right in. Turn down the heat here. We can actually probably just turn the heat off now. That's plenty hot for the greens to cook down. And to finish that off, I'm just going to add a little bit of tamari soy sauce. Just a little bit, you don't want it to get too salty. a good toss to mix everything around. Cover goes on, just let that sit. So we're going to go ahead and check our steak. And I'm just testing it now to feel the doneness. It feels pretty good. So we're going to stop it right there. I'm going to take it right off the grill pan. I'm going to put it on a plate. I'm going to cover it up and let that sit for at least 5 or 6 minutes to make sure that those juices cool down. If you cut into it right now, all of the juice is going to run out and you're going to end up with a really dry steak. We're going to deglaze this with some butter and then throw in some whole cloves of garlic. Once that gets cooking, we'll throw in our rosemary and our mushrooms. Here I've got a couple sprigs of dried rosemary. We're just going to add that right into the pan to incorporate into the butter. With that, we're going to add our mushrooms. Now that our garlicky, buttery rosemary mushrooms are nice and browned, we're going to go ahead and we're going to cut into our steak, which has now rested for several minutes. Has great browning on it. Just cut that right in half for 2 portions. That's a nice, about rare to medium rare. That's what that is right about there. Let's go ahead and plate our meal with the steak. Some greens. Our braised carrots. These are carrots, believe it or not. They're rainbow carrots. They're nice and red. Garlic mashed potatoes. One more time. Ooh, lost a little mashed potato in there. Grab some mushrooms. Put that right over the steak. And there we are.